Good evening, everyone. My name is David Harris with the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice. On behalf of Tomiko Brown-Nagin and Dean Manning, I want to welcome you to Harvard Law School tonight. We're very excited and very happy to be able to present a film, Tribal Justice, to you tonight. And for us, it's a special occasion. We showed a film in 2008 called Courting Justice that, as I ended, continues to kind of rivet audiences, telling the story of South African judges. And we're very pleased to have the producer of that film with us here tonight, and who we'll introduce a little bit later. But Ruth Cowan is really a marvel and really a special treasure for us, and we're really pleased to have her back. I'm going to leave it to a colleague to do the formal introduction, but I want to give some thanks to our various co-sponsors. We're really pleased to be able to have tonight sponsorship from the Harvard Graduate School of Education Office of Student Affairs, from FIERCE, Future Indigenous Educators Resisting Colonial Education. I love it. You can't say it too many times. The Harvard Native American Program, and NALSA, the Harvard Native American Law Student Association, as well as the Institute. So we're actually extremely grateful for their support, and also encourage all of you to find out, learn a little bit more, and see what you can do to be supportive of their work. So I want to introduce a few folks who are going to be involved in the program tonight. We're really fortunate that we have the co-sponsors we have. And with us tonight, we have Morgan Christopher, a Salt River Pima and Laguna Pueblo High School teacher currently enrolled at the Harvard School of Education, who's interested in restorative justice generally, but also co-chair of FIERCE. We also have Chad Mata, first-year law student from the Yaqui Nation, and also a member of NALSA. We're also going to be joined by phone with a relative, but Joseph Thomas Fliesaway, who's a wellness judge for the Wallapai, thank you, see, you told me and I still blew it, the Wallapai Nation, who has consulted with other nations on matters of restorative justice and knows the two justices featured in tonight's film. I'd like to also kind of inform you of a few events we have coming up and encourage you to go to our website to find out the details. But on April 2nd, this Monday, we will have Linda Gordon here, who has written a book on the rise of the KKK in the 1920s. It's a really marvelous book. Linda Gordon is a dean of American historians, and it's an incredibly timely work in today's atmosphere to think about the roots of the modern white supremacy movement. On Tuesday, April 10th, we'll have a talk by Travis Bristol, who's a professor of education, who is going to give a talk on, it's a great topic of research he's doing, policing and teaching, the positioning of black male teachers as agents in the universal carceral apparatus. It's really about the tendency to look to black male teachers as in-school cops. And then on April 11th, we'll host historian Jean Theoharis, who is another prominent historian and has a new book called A More Beautiful and Terrible History, The Uses and Misuses of Civil Rights History, and that talk will include Khalil Muhammad as a discussant. So I want to give two other pieces of special thanks. One is to my colleague Tracy Jones from the Harvard School of Education, who has really been helpful in making some connections for us and really sponsors these events with us and is a real treasure for me. And as always, I have to give real thanks and praise to my colleague Kelly Garvin, who does all of the technical stuff and creates these wonderful posters for us and refuses to put her name on them and refuses to show up and take her congratulations, but I always have to put this on the record. So to Kelly Garvin, thanks and praise. So I'm going to get us started soon. Let's get us started now, and I'd like to introduce Morgan Christopher to come up and to introduce Ruth Cowan.
So So thank you so much. How's everyone doing tonight? So first, before I start, I'd like to introduce myself in my traditional languages. So shkikdar shaninawar shakkai shatchugi kanianap chugig sialak yasik Morgan Christopher on kakamel atom gawatsi sai hopa wado hename hoka shawit hanatsta gwishtamesta koikamesta. So I said, hello, my friends, how are you? My English name is Morgan Christopher, but my atom or Kuwait name given to me by my grandparents. And just translate it into morning blossom and sky. I'm very grateful to be here with you all today, particularly talking about the themes of tribal justice. So I think this title is very significant and is a great way to open up the film, because we cannot think about tribal justice without first taking the time to acknowledge whose land we are on. And so I want to take this moment for all of us here to think about critically how we are all occupiers of the Massachusetts and Wampanoag land, and how I also want to give thanks and recognition to the other nations who come before us before this construction of the state that we now know as Massachusetts. I was also a little hesitant at first when I was first asked to participate in this event, given this efforts that fierce or future Indigenous educators resisting colonial education has been doing throughout the month of March in regards to Women's History Month. And we've really been doing a lot of efforts of trying to honor Indigenous women. But as we will see and learn about today, it just so happens that the two judges featured in this film happen to be two Indigenous women. And so I think that's incredibly powerful, and I'm very excited to learn from them. Also, as we watch this film, I really encourage all of us to be thinking critically about, regardless if we are Indigenous or not, how we can think about these practices of healing and restorative justice, and think about how we ourselves, regardless of the communities that we come from, can utilize some of these practices that have existed in many Indigenous communities for times immemorial. With that said, I just also want to give a little bit structure about what we'll be doing after the film. As was mentioned, we'll have the opportunity to discuss with Chad Mata, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, from the Yaqui Nation, as well as Ruth Cowan, and then get my uncle on the phone where we can ask him some questions. So with that, I want to thank you guys all again, and I want to give a round of applause to the executive producer and invite her up to discuss the film, Ruth Cowan.
I'm not going to say anything about the film because it will speak to you, I hope. I hope it speaks to everyone. Just want to comment that the tribal court systems are part of a vibrant movement in this country, Native American movement, Indigenous movement, which is part of an international, vibrant Indigenous movement. And the goal is to restore lost sovereignty. And of course, a nation cannot be sovereign without some kind of system that handles disputes, resolves disputes, what we call a justice system. So I look forward to your comments and your questions when we finish. I do want to say to Morgan that Ann Makepeace, who was the director of this film, her film just before this was We Still Live Here. And it features a Wampanoag woman who had a dream about restoring her dead language. And subsequent to the film, she got a MacArthur Genius Award, which she was able to use to continue in that effort. Virtually every tribe is trying to restore its lost language and its lost sovereignty. I mentioned to David earlier, I mean, the film is going viral, and I was with Judge White this week, early this week, and she said that the film is being used in a number of states, California being one of them, to bring together the state court judges and the tribal court judges in working out ways in which they can cooperate and affect change. I mean, the film is having an effect. I just welcome your comments and questions. Okay.
Nche vache, emeshe, ne alane. So, hello, I'm happy to see you all. My name's Chad Mata. I am of the Yaqui Nation, specifically the Texas band of Yaqui. I am the youngest appointed tribal council member. I am low seniority, but
You are a council member? Is
I
that
am. But I do advise the elders certain times. My background as far as being Native generationally, my grandmother was orphaned and removed from her Native heritage. So it's something we had to kind of get through generationally. We faced a lot of the poverty. I dropped out of high school, my brothers did, to get back here. So we kind of see things from that perspective a bit.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I just want to comment, you're a member of the tribal council. Judge White was a member of the tribal council, the youngest member elected to the tribal council. And there were some very serious legal issues at the time, and they would be going to Washington. And it was clear to her that the people they were speaking with in the legislature and in the administration just didn't see the Native Americans. They were invisible. Simply spoke with the attorneys who were not Native. And that's when Judge White decided she was going to go to law school. Her son Zion was 3 years old. She went to law school, got up 5 o'clock in the morning to bake cookies, went out on the street to sell them to raise money. And Zion always says, when I was 3, I went to law school. So who knows? Here you are in law school.
Yeah, I'm a first year at Harvard Law, so
Yeah.
I feel happy to be here.
You'll be
One
a
of the
judge.
few. We'll see. One of the few to be here, and I'm proud, and I hope we're actually, as a member of the Native American Law Student Association, I'm probably going to be running for co-president next year, and I think recruiting and bringing more natives to this area, up into this elite group of law students is important for the continuation of our protection for generations to come. So I think that's going to be a big part.
Well, my next project is to write about the Native American Rights Fund. And the executive director of the Native American Rights Fund, John Echohawk, founded the Native American Law Students Association when he was a law student at the University of I want to say Mexico. Is that Mexico? New Mexico. So you're in good company.
That's cool. All right, so I actually wanted to, I was just curious how you got to find these specific tribes. They seem like they're both in different points of their development, of their independence from state judicial system.
It's an important question. California has the greatest number of tribal courts, of tribes of any state. Not necessarily the largest native population, but the largest number of tribes. The film began when I was approached by Jennifer Walter, who was at that time the supervising attorney for the state of California judicial system on all matters regarding Native American legal issues that went to the courts. And Jenny was also she was working with all of the tribes. They respected her enormously. And it was Jenny who said, these are the 2 largest tribes in the state of California. So that took away any kind of argument and discomfort on the part of other tribes, like the Hoopa tribe is right near the Yurok tribe. It's a large tribe. It's not as large as the Yurok. And Judge Blake, who was the presiding judge of the Hoopa tribe, he was with us all the way. If we had started with other tribal courts with a different rationale, some of the people may have felt offended that we didn't pick them. So that was easy. And then what was wonderful was the fact that there were a couple of things that were wonderful. One was that the 2 judges came from such different parts of the state. So it was visually beautiful. And then, well, I'll just leave it there. And then also that these are such extraordinary people, Judge Claudette White and and Abby Abenante, just extraordinary human beings, intelligent. Judge Abenante was, when she went to a school, she didn't go to a Native American school, she was told she was retarded. She just is so creative, so clear-headed. So we were just fortunate that the two largest tribes were located in such beautiful parts of the state, and then the presiding judges were just such incredible human beings. And then because of Jennifer Walter, Ann Makepeace and I were accepted. We didn't have to prove ourselves in too much.
I'm just curious, so you're uncle? Oh, okay. Thank you. So this film has like a very intimate feel at times, and for me it gave me a lot of emotions.
Me too.
Looking at the characters and kind of experiencing similar things growing up. I was just wondering if you had a favorite moment in the film and why.
No, I don't think I have a favorite moment in the film, but I've seen it thousands of times. And of course, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of footage that we, of course, didn't use in the film. So seen it. And I still am moved by it.
No, it's, I think when, I forgot his name. It's not Talos, Isaac, yeah. When he's sitting there, when he's there asking for custody over him, even though he's going to be an adult, you get to see his eyes, the weight of knowing that he's facing this absolute responsibility and he has no idea how to cope with it yet. And he really needed that support. And I think that says a lot about Native communities when we don't have that support that people kind of take for granted growing up with. That going into the world and being responsible is a very scary thing when you don't have that background support. So I think that captured that scene like really well. Just a lot of emotions that I've seen before in my life. So thank you for that. Let's see. So have you seen other tribes about this? Have you shown this other tribes? What was the response?
We have tremendous support from the tribal communities. There's an association of tribal court judges, and they have supported this project from the very beginning. So they've shown it a number of times, and we showed them trailers while the work was in progress. It's being shown widely in all kinds of as you know, Native Americans are very organized. There are hundreds of thousands of organizations, and many of those organizations, to the extent that they're related to Indian law, they're all showing it as conferences with big discussions. Is going viral. It was featured on Turtle Talk. I don't know if you read Turtle Talk, Matthew Fletcher's. It was featured in Turtle Talk. It's known. You're not going to find anyone in the Indian law area who's Native American who isn't aware of the film.
Oh, that's awesome. It's
yes.
a very nice treat to have you here. I was wondering if there was any component that was very surprising to you going through this and that kind of caught you off guard. What was that like?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Okay. One thing I was thinking about is just like this.
I can't say it caught me off guard, but it was so impressive, and we see it more with Judge Abenante, than we see it because her court has been chief judge for a longer period of time than Judge White. And she also has staff. She has parole officers, and Judge White doesn't have that kind of staff. So it's a much more established system, and wonderful, wonderful staff. I think just what kept striking me over and over and over again is that you would never see anything like this in a state court. And the previous film that I made, Courting Justice, was shown in a lot of courts. And I remember one judge said to me, he was a family court judge, he said, "I feel I do more harm than good." I mean, imagine having a job, where you feel so I can't say I was shocked. I was just so impressed with this approach. The executive editor of the New York Times left. the Times, and he now is head of a program for court reform. And before he left, he wrote either an op-ed piece or an editorial. And he said, everybody in our state and federal justice systems acknowledge that the systems are broken. We have to change. Of course, people have to be punished. And it's getting rid of that. Of course, punishment comes first, and then rehabilitation. Well, it's hard to be rehabilitated if you've been in solitary confinement, let's say. So I can't say, just so moved by the effectiveness, the humanity in it. This, one second.
I want to apologize for missing the first part of what you said. I had to run out and feed the meter. So someone may have said this already, but I want to say what was so remarkable about the film to me was not only the justice that you showed, but what was remarkable about it was the larger ecosystem that was causing problems that would get people into a justice system, whether it's tribal, state, or otherwise. It wasn't just that it was a contrast between tribal justice and the regular justice. It was the systemic nature of the problems. When the young man said, oh, I don't know, maybe I did it because I was bored. It took us inside the worldview and the experience of people who were getting involved with all kinds of issues. The film didn't critique those things, but it showed you those things, and it leaves the viewer experiencing those things. And of course, we have those same things in the wider society. For me, it's a powerful call to action to address the larger issues that are feeding anyone winding up in that situation. I just thought it was stunning.
Thank you. When you said it wasn't critique, I'm a political scientist. I write and make points. And Ann Makepeace, who's a filmmaker, kept saying, no, Ruth, in a film, you tell stories. You don't make a speech.
I too found it a very fine film, very informative and powerful. You found the tribes, then you found the judges. How did you find those particular cases? And did you, in fact, film other cases that were on the cutting room floor? Because they were pretty marvelous to get access to Isaac, for example, in spite of all of his troubles. He's on the run and stuff, and you're still able to interview him, and he's pretty articulate. It's extraordinary.
The answer to your question is, when you start a documentary film, you don't know that you're going to have a film. You don't know that you're going to have a story. We worked on this for 4.5 years, and it wasn't until quite the end that we felt we had a story, that we had a film, a balanced film. We had a very good story with Taos. He's just a powerful, powerful person. There's something very sweet about Taos, too. Probably doesn't come out. There was an image of him that I just love that we weren't able to incorporate in the film, which is the sweetness of this young man. In that graduation scene, we filmed every single we followed the stories of every single one of those persons who was graduating, and that's all on the floor somewhere. So we just persevered, and as I said, it wasn't until quite near the end of the 4.5 years that we felt we actually had a film, because we couldn't just have a film about Taos. I mean, it would be off balance, and we didn't have the count, etc. So there's a lot. Some of the footage that is not in the film is being used. point of view, POV, is partnering with us. And POV showed it twice on National Public Television. And they have prepared a curriculum and a study guide, which includes footage that's not in the film and which is distributed free to all libraries and schools throughout the country. So a lot of the screenings that are taking place now are a result of POV's efforts, museums, libraries, schools that are showing it. So does that answer your question? Yeah. It was just that we just persevered, even though we didn't know that after 4.5 years we would say, sorry.
Morgan?
Ruth, just real quick. Ruth, I have a question for you. As a non-native, non-indigenous person, can you tell us a little bit about your role maybe as an ally in the film, working with the sovereign nations, and what that can teach the non-native people in the room as well about their role as an ally to indigenous communities?
I don't know that I can answer that, because Anne and I were fortunate in that we were accepted. There's no reason to accept us. You know, they're white ladies who've come before, telling people, saying, "I'm here to help," and it didn't work out. So I don't know. I know that there is. The first time I met Judge Abenanti, she sat across me with her arms folded, just staring me down. This wasn't the first person who, no one came to talk about making a film, but people have ideas, telling other people what's good for them. What you should do is, at the end of the conversation with Abby, we embraced. I don't know. I have to give that a lot more thought, and I think the answer has to come from Native Americans who say, this is how you can help, rather than someone outside. Someone outside say, here I am to help, and this is what you should do, because that's been the history, and it's not a good history.
We don't always trust.
What?
We don't always trust.
No, and rightfully so. There's a history that warrants that mistrust. So my answer is, I think it'd be helpful to show this film, because there are stereotypes about Native Americans that aren't real. So I think to the extent that the film something like this film, and there's no other film like it, if to the extent that it can be promoted. But my answer to you, Morgan, is make ourselves available, and if someone wants our help, that's something else. I don't know if that...
No, I think it's helpful maybe if you want to share a little bit more about the process that it took the community to accept you, because as you mentioned, I'm sure it wasn't something initial.
We had a wonderful cinematographer, Barney Broomfield, third-generation filmmaker. But Barney just clicked with everybody, including Isaac. So here he is. Barney is filming Isaac, in prison and with his father, and because Isaac liked Barney. Barney liked Isaac. Anne and I were accepted, partly because Judge Abenanti and Judge White accepted us. And it's tremendous what particularly Judge White did, just in inviting us into her life. There's so much footage that we have. For example, her son's hair, he wants to grow it to his ankles, and then he's going to cut it, but not before it's down to his ankles. So we filmed in the morning before Zion goes to school. Judge White is combing his hair. It's like a half an hour process, to comb his long hair. Things that she was just so... so welcome. She was, even though she was reluctant personally to do that, she did it with grace. She, by the way, has now a different job. She's taken over. She's been invited by a different tribe, and she started, I think, a couple weeks ago, to set up a model tribal court. And I said to her, you've got to take notes. You've got to keep a diary of the process. So I think, Anne is a wonderful person to work with. And I think that was conveyed, that we weren't there to intrude, we were there to do something. I don't know. You'd have to ask the people who were involved. There were some people who didn't want to be filmed. And that was it. They didn't want to, they didn't have to.
Thank you.
Wish we could have met before.
Hi, I have two questions, really. First is, from a medical point of view, to what extent are the troubles of a lot of the children due to fetal alcohol syndrome or the effect of maternal drugs during the pregnancy? The second is, I was struck by how much time and effort the judge put in each case. And you made reference to the fact that in the regular U.S. court system, we don't have all these social workers and people to monitor the people on a personal basis. We just punish them. Could you answer those two questions? What are the resources that we would need to add to our court system, and how much would it cost?
Do you want to answer that?
I don't know. Okay. I don't know much about, I guess, the alcohol effects or drug usage during pregnancy. I do know that when you are in an environment of poverty, parents seem to not be able to cope as well. They have a lot of pressures on them, and they may turn to things that they think is easy, like just punishment in their perception of physical violence. And that causes a post-stress. And this is usually generational. I know for myself, I was physically handled as a child, and religion was the backing of it. My mother was taught the same thing from her mother. So it's one of those generational things that kind of causes PTSD effect on us. And I think that leads to a lot of drinking and a lot of drug use. But you also have to consider the socioeconomic opportunities in res. There just isn't that much of an economy. There isn't that much opportunity. When you grow up, you see jobs as working within there, and those are usually blue-collar jobs. And the people you know usually aren't achieving much more. So it kind of limits your view, and you kind of have this, and everyone has it around you. It's going to be very hard to get out of that situation. So I hope that answers. Does that help? Oh, okay.
So I think we might have to wrap up soon, but I did want to ask one question, and it's a kind of a softball question because you alluded to it earlier in our conversation. But what's been the reaction among kind of mainstream courts? I mean, have you been able to present this to our straight American courts, and what's the reception been? What's
been the reaction among whom?
Among kind of conventional courts. I mean, conventional judiciary.
Oh, the state courts.
Yeah.
There was last week. There are organizations and people in the state and federal court system who are working for reform, and they're open to this. And last week there was a huge storm in New York City, but the night of the storm there was a screening by a state unit within the state court system, and the people at the screening were state court judges and attorneys, and the reaction there was very positive. But they're eager to find another way. There is in New York City, where I live, in Brooklyn, there is a state court in Red Hook section of Brooklyn that tries to model itself after the tribal court, and it works. In the state court and federal, we have drug courts that try to use the rehabilitation model, but our hope is that this will open up the eyes. There are three audiences we want to reach. I mean, clearly Native American audiences. Two, we want to reach audiences of those people who are involved in the state and federal justice systems to show that there's another way. And then the third audience, the people who never heard of Native Americans, don't know they exist, they can be living in California. Someone, well, I never met there aren't any Native Americans here. I said, well, have you ever passed a casino? Oh yeah, there are casinos. Well, in California, casino gambling is illegal, excepting if it's on a reservation. So they're just not there. So we want to reach that audience too, and that would be through the PBS and through the film festivals and that kind of thing. But we are trying to reach state and federal court judges and the attorneys, the bar associations. Say, look, this can work.
Thank you. So, Chad and Morgan, I have a question for each of you, which is, are there ways in which people can be supportive of the work you're doing, and are there ways in which you can think of kind of using this film, or just, I'm curious about, you asked Ruth, I'm going to ask you.
You?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all educators, regardless if you're working in the classroom, like I'll be returning to, but I think this film is just a really powerful way to begin the conversation. Ruth, I think you bring up an excellent point, particularly at this school where Native peoples, Indigenous peoples, people are like, what? I didn't even know you guys existed. So I always think film is a universal medium to begin the conversation, and I will definitely be using this in the classroom with my students. Good. And I really appreciate the fact with like the curriculum already created. I think that's great.
Okay, so how I'm thinking about this is this shows the disparity even between these two tribes shows that based on their economic funding or self-funding, they're able to provide certain services to their people. Where you have the Yurok, where they're able to do criminal. That's something for Tao. You can see he's such a success story because of his drug involvement, where he was, about to be a 3-strike offender. And then you can see, Isaac, who is, low end, maybe felony, maybe, it depends on his representation. I think, generally speaking, that probably could have been knocked down. But the tribe didn't have the resources there. So to me, I think if we get this out there and we understand this as for what it is, and there's a disparity even amongst the tribes, and there's a lack of funding. Federal allocation of funds have not been enough to ensure the security and continuation of our people. To me, that is plain enough just seeing something like this. And I think the more people who are aware of it, then maybe that can cause some institutional change. We're going to do our part and try to get to those echelons where we can actually do that. But, the more people that are aware, the more support we'll have. And so that's definitely appreciated as many people can get that out there.
I think on that note, we really should thank all of you, and I wish you all a very good night. I hope you'll visit our website and come to more of our events. Thank you.
We can talk.